Our main character, Bak-chan, also known as the Duke of Death, was cursed by a witch when he was 5 years old. He takes the life out of anything he touches, so his mother banned him and sent him to a mansion in the forest. There he lives with his maid Alice and his butler Rob. MC writes a letter in his room and wonders why the witch cursed him. Suddenly Alice appears and leans toward him, which makes him scared as she is very close to him. Later in the garden, she serves him tea and cookies. Alice pulls up her dress, making sure that her thighs are showing off. MC asks her to stop sexually harassing him. She then puts a cookie in her mouth and tells him to eat it. He eats the cookie, and she informs him that it's an indirect kiss, which makes him blush. Later, he starts swinging and accidentally touches the tree, killing it. She falls, and Alice appears in front of him, pulling his dress up and making him blush. He once again tells her to stop doing that. He doesn't want to lose her, and he has known her since she was a child. She is the only one who spends time with him despite knowing his touch would be fatal, and she enjoys tempting him with her body. Alice informs him that his cute reaction makes her want to tease him even more. She slowly lifts her clothes to cheer him up. The next day, Alice serves him food and asks him why he is uninterested in eating food. He replies that mealtime has been the worst part of his day ever since he was cursed. He also informs her that ever since she came here, he has started to eat more and more, which makes her happy. His childhood friend Phillips asks if he can visit, and Duke agrees as he hopes to have friends again. Alice brings a suit and asks him to wear it. He tells her to leave so that he can wear it, but she wants to help, and she points out that if they both get undressed, it will be fair, so he starts to undress. He stops her and bewildered, he changes his clothes in front of her. He's nervous, and he hasn't seen Phillips in a long time, but now he finally gets a chance to see her. He hopes that they will be friends again. Finally, Phillips arrives with guards. When MC puts one foot forward, he is stopped by the guards, which ruins Duke's hopes. Philip is scared when Duke accidentally touches a plant, which withers away. Later, Phillips tries to convince Alice to leave Duke, whom he calls a monster. He then reveals that Duke's mother forced him to visit as a spy, revealing she wants to completely cut Duke off from the family and replace him with his younger brother as the family heir. Philip leaves, promising to never come back. Duke is heartbroken. In the garden, he asks Alice if he will ever be able to touch her, and he also wants the warmth of her body. If he wants to give her a present, even a flower will just wither in his hand. She takes the withered flowers and says to him, in the language of flowers, a withered white rose means to swear your whole life to someone, which makes him blush red. She declares that they will break his curse together. This is how they confess their love for each other. MC hopes one day he will be able to put a ring on her finger. The next day, Duke's butler Rob returns to work. As MC walks, Rob mistakenly thinks he is Alice and tries to catch him. Rob's poor vision causes MC concern because he frequently runs the risk of running into Duke. Duke then starts playing the piano. He hopes that one day he will become a good pianist. Suddenly Alice appears, which scares him. He plays a song that he wrote for her. She almost kisses him after he falls asleep. The next day, MC's younger sister Viola, who has an annoying girly personality, visits him. Later, Alice serves her different types of sweets. Duke gets teased by Viola as soon as she realizes he has a crush on Alice. She surprisingly tells Duke to break his curse quickly so he can come home. She then accidentally bumps into Rob and reveals she has a crush on him. At night, Duke screams as he sees a cat wander into the mansion. Alice carries the cat, and the cat touches his melons and cuts the front of her dress. Rob finds a note on the cat's collar asking for forgiveness, which leads Duke to believe that the cat was abandoned. Duke releases the cat outside and discovers that it has several kittens and a wife. Later that night, Duke asks Alice to dance, and though it is difficult, they manage to dance without touching. After that, he nervously asks her how she feels about him. She admits that she loves and adores him. Alice and Duke seem to be playing pool. He asks her if she is okay with the term "the loser has to do whatever the winner says." She responds by saying that this is the term she suggested after all. Duke is about to win when he goes to strike the last ball. Alice teases him by saying, "Don't put it in there." As a result, he makes a foul, and Alice gets to put the ball where she likes and wins the game. She then asks him to go to a festival in the town. Duke disagrees as he is cursed and can accidentally touch someone. She advises him to wear a thick costume so that anyone who bumps into him will be fine. At the festival, he gets stuck in the crowd and loses her. Alice gets worried and starts looking for him. She gets stopped by a mysterious masked lady named Deleth. She recognizes Alice as Sharon Lendrot's daughter. Meanwhile, MC starts looking for her, and a little boy grabs him and asks him for help. The little boy is crying because he lost his mother. He makes the lost child feel better by playing the piano, his skill causing the crowd to dance. The little boy's mother found him, and Alice also found Duke. Duke becomes aware that rumors about his curse are spreading after spotting a novelty mask on his face. They then go to a clock tower. The view of the city from the clock tower mesmerizes Duke. Alice tells him a fairy tale about a princess who married the moon. The princess and the prince were deeply in love. In fact, they were engaged to get married, but a jealous witch came and carried him to the moon. Every year since the anniversary of the night she used to be married, the princess looks toward the moon and offers a kiss to her faraway prince. Duke claims that this is the exact opposite of them. It's because even if he is standing close to her, he is not able to touch her. Even on a date, he can't hold her hand. She tells him that being close to him makes her happy, and she hopes he will continue to keep her near him always. Duke receives a note from Alice that says, "If you can't sleep, you are welcome to my room." He knocks on the door and opens it. He sees that Alice is naked, and it makes him blush. He quickly closes the door and tells her to wear some clothes. He then asks her why he is naked. She replies that when she is in her room, she feels comfortable not wearing any clothes. He sits on a chair and sees her panty. She gives him a cup of tea and says that after he finishes, they should head over to the bed. It makes him blush at the same time as being nervous because she is planning to do something perverted. She then asks him to remove his clothes and tells him to surrender himself. She extinguishes the candle and tells him to lie down. She asks him to close his eyes and sleep. Alice apologizes to him for giving him the wrong idea. She just helps him relax so he can sleep. He asks her to go out with him tomorrow because he has something important to show her. The next night, he takes her to a pond in a boat. He wants to show her the meteor shower that only happens once every decade. When MC was a child, he saw it at this lake, and he will treasure it forever. But this time, he wants to share it with her, and he also plans to tell her how he really feels about her. A strong wind blows, and his hat is blown away. She catches it but falls into the lake. Alice demands a kiss. She says to him, "If you really love me, then give me a kiss even if it kills me." But when he refuses, she reveals it was a trick so she could tip him in the water as well. They miss the meteor shower, and Duke is upset he couldn't tell Alice he loves her as he planned, but he tells her about the plan by mistake.
まあ、いたずらな風でしょうか。坊ちゃん見てました？
見てないよ。何のつもりだ、マクファーレン。だって数百年も女子と戯れてないし。
あ、またいたずらな風が。坊ちゃん見てます？
大丈夫、見てない。せっかくだから見よう。なんで？
あ、もうダメです。いたずらな風が。
なんかいたずらな風吹くの。しかも自分で脱いでるし。
At home, Alice tells him that in another 10 years they should go to the same spot to watch the meteor shower. Duke worries when Alice stops teasing him. Normally, Alice managed to harass him 3 times in the span of 50 seconds, but Duke discovers that she just has a cold, so he takes care of her. After she recovers, Alice asks Duke to spend the day in the snow and gives him a scarf she knitted. He throws an ice ball into her chest, and it makes her chest wet. Rob joins them and starts to make a snowman. Duke throws an ice ball toward Alice, which she dodges easily. She then throws snowballs at him. When Alice returns inside, she notices she has dropped an earring that belonged to her mother. Duke sneaks outside to search for the earring but passes out in the cold. A bat transforms into a girl and approaches in front of him. She tries to help him by giving him a hand, but he notifies her about his course. He then informs her that he is searching for an earring belonging to his maid, which is precious to her. He passes out again, and she helps him and uses magic to find the earring. She then introduces herself as Cuff. She is a witch, and she is looking for her friend. Duke invites Cuff inside and gives Alice her earring. Alice serves food, and she informs them that she hasn't eaten for 2 days. Cuff reveals that she is wary of people because they killed her parents and avoided her because she is half-human, which prevented her from learning about curses. She reveals that her friend might know something, when Duke remarks that she seems truly like her friend. Based on how much she trusts him, she leaps out of a window and disappears. Alice reminisces about one of the last times Duke was able to touch her and defended her from bullies. He claimed the snow made her look like a snow fairy. Back to the present, Duke appears, and Duke gets the impression by looking at her eyes that she wants to hold her hand. Thus, his love for Alice grows every time. Viola visits and sees Rob, which makes her nervous. Later, Alice serves her sweets, which she enjoys eating. She is also curious about Alice, who remains an enigma to her. She asks her if she can squeeze her melons. She expresses that they are very soft, which makes Duke jealous, and she declares that Alice must learn how to make a cute face. But she is already a master at appearing cute toward Duke. On the other hand, Viola embarrasses herself by making a cute face at Rob. Later in the kitchen, Viola finds Duke and Alice. Alice is trying to make her eat a spoonful of soup. He explains that they are using the smell to attract the witch. Viola gets a chance to show Rob how girly she is, so she insists on helping Alice cook, but she keeps getting distracted by Rob. She admits that she is jealous of her brother. Duke has people who will support him and give him mental support through his curse. She then reminds him to find a cure before their young brother becomes the head of the house. A few days later, Duke takes Alice to a frozen lake to skate. There he meets a white crow who can speak and transform into a human named Zane, who is also a magician. The crow asks him about a lost person who is a young red-haired girl. Duke recognizes him as Cuff's friend and informs him that she mentioned him. Meanwhile, Alice finds Cuff in her bat form in the lake and puts her on her chest to warm her up with her body heat. Zane meets with Alice and flirts with her. Cuff gets out of Alice's melons, revealing that this is the first time anyone has wabbled her between their melons. They decide to take part in ice skating. Duke is envious that Cuff and Zane can have physical contact, while Zane is envious that Duke and Alice can be open about their feelings. Cuff decides to take Duke to the witch's Sabbath on the night of the next blood moon, where Duke might locate the witch who cursed him. Viola goes to Alice's room and sees her half naked. She decided to stay the night at her home. She sees a dead flower in a jar and asks her why she has it. Alice replies that it's a precious treasure to her. They discuss love and Viola's desire for an older sister, since her mother tended to ignore her. Viola falls asleep at her solder and Duke comes to search for his sister. He becomes envious when he sees Viola sleeping with Alice. Alice advises Duke to pay more attention to his sister in the future. When Duke is thinking about reading at the conservatory, he finds the conservatory is in a mess. His conservatory is overgrown, so he uses his curse to kill unnecessary plants. He notices that she is enjoying the beauty of the flowers. He makes a flower crown for Alice, despite the flowers being dead. She likes it and expresses that she is happy to have a master like him. At night, Duke hears Alice's voice as he walks. She runs toward her and sees her naked. She informs him that her gown was stolen by a cat while she was showering. Duke gives his coat to Alice, and it provides her several chances to tease him. Finally, they find the cat, and the gown is beyond saving. She gets upset as it was one Duke liked. Alice invites Duke to shower with her, which he refuses. She then tries to give back his coat, but he refuses and says to return it tomorrow. On the blood moon night, Zane and Cuff come to take Duke to the witch's Sabbath. Duke seems to be taking a lot of weapons, but Cuff burns them and mentions that he doesn't need to take those. Cuff gives Alice and Duke a special costume so that they can disguise themselves as witches. Zane uses his magic to turn a mirror into a portal to enter the witch's Sabbath. Duke gets scared as he sees all the witches, who look like monsters. Deleth, the Sabbath leader, comes and checks how many people attended the witch's Sabbath. She notices that Cuff and Zane bring 2 strangers. She asks who they are. Zane whispers into Cuff's ear that they are his siblings, but she says that they are their children, which makes Zane mad. Duke is surprised when the Sabbath turns out to be an administrative meeting lasting only 5 minutes. Deleth recognizes Alice, and she confronts her and Duke. revealing she only met Alice's mother once in Duke as a child. She then mentions that she knows who cursed Duke. She also reveals that she is dead and that she was a genius magic user. Hence, it is unlikely that Duke's curse can ever be lifted. She then burns Duke's disguises, which reveals to all the Withers that they are humans. All the witches try to catch them. A witch uses a plant to catch Alice, but Duke rescues her by touching the plant, which makes the plant dead, and they manage to flee. Duke wonders why Zane and Cuff helped them. Cuff explains that when she first met with him, she saw him go all out for someone else's sake, which made her decide to be friends. Duke hopes they can become friends as well. She then promises their next visit will be as friends, which makes him super happy. Alice mentions that it is tough not to be able to touch someone you love. She teases him by asking if he wants to touch her. She then declares that they will break the curse no matter what. Despite the bad news about his curse, Duke is determined to find a cure. Alice buys a witch's pot to brew a potion that supposedly removes curses. Even a recipe book came with it. Duke asks her what kind of potion she is making. She mistakenly says that she is making a love potion. Alice activates the pot by saying magic words. It starts to boil water. She then puts in some weird ingredients and mixes them up. She says another magic word which makes the pot emit smoke. She then instructs him to continue mixing it and to think about all the good things in his life, but he messes up by thinking about Alice. After that, she reveals that it is actually a potion to remove the witch's curse. Duke eats a spoonful of the potion and says that it tastes like hell. He touches a flower to examine it, but it seems that it has not worked. So he gives the pot to Rob. Rob takes it and is surprised to discover that it can speak, which makes Viola jealous. Meanwhile, Alice finds an old music book in the library. She requests Duke to play it. If he can play it perfectly, it can cure curses, otherwise it will make him mad. He starts to play the music and sees the ghost of the music writer. The ghost explains that only the person who plays the music can see him. The ghost also explains that no one was able to play the music perfectly, and that's why he is here to watch over even after death. The ghost distracts Duke by trying to molest Alice, but she foils him. Duke finishes playing the music perfectly, but the only curse lifted is the ghost, who moves on, having heard his song played perfectly. The next day, Duke wakes up early to call Alice to the mansion, but when she opens the door he sees her in undergarments. He reminisces about the suspension bridge effect from Viola, which she tells him the previous day. So he decided to scare Alice. He hides, and when she comes out he tries to scare her but fails. He then tells Alice a scary story, which doesn't scare Alice a bit. He then shows a disturbing image of a woman with an eye bleed. But Duke becomes terrified instead, and he nearly curses the flower that Rob has been cultivating for 50 years. He runs from the scene as Rob looks scary and hides in a wardrobe. Alice finds him and asks him why he is here. He states that he is not prepared to face Rob and requests to close the door. But she enters the wardrobe, and right at that moment, Rob comes and leaves. She gets too close to him, which makes him leave the wardrobe. The mansion is big, so he starts to think about where he will hide next. Alice suggests to him that he hide under her dress, which he denies. Later, they hide under his bed, and they have a lovely conversation, but they were interrupted by Rob. He finds out that Rob is actually grateful. Rob finds jewelry from the broken flower pot that belonged to Duke's grandmother and was stolen by a maid decades ago, which was hidden in the flower pot and can now be returned. After being magically sent to sleep by a book on casting out curses, Duke and Alice awaken in a fantastical world. When Alice lets him grope her melons, Duke is frustrated because he can't feel Alice's melons since it is a dream. After spending the entire night attempting to catch a white rabbit for a girl wearing a blue dress, they decide to end the dream with a kiss, but Duke awakens in his own library before they can. Cuff asks Rob to teach her to read and write to impress Zane, but she gets a headache just learning a few words. Duke asks her about Zane. She informs him that he is in a circus and they have a job at the circus. Walter, Duke's brother, charms all the maids as he walks toward Viola and asks her, where is she going? She doesn't tell him, but he realizes that she is going to Duke's mansion. Walter suffers from a strong inferiority complex due to being the younger brother. is upset that their mother still wants Duke to be the heir, and that Viola prefers Duke over him. Viola mentions him as a second-born son, which forces him to inform his mother that she has gone to a friend's house. Viola visits Duke's mansion and encounters Cuff. Cuff introduces herself as a local circus performer and informs her that he doesn't know where Duke and Alice are. She attempts to apprehend her as she thinks she is an intruder. But when Duke and Rob come, they see her sitting on top of another woman, which embarrasses her. During a snowstorm, Alice reminisces about her first time at the mansion when Duke was younger. He was depressed about his curse and destroyed his room in anger. At first, he rejected Alice and told her to leave for her own good. She was his childhood friend and wouldn't let him be alone, so he gave him the challenge to clean his room in 3 days. She reminisced about her childhood, where Duke always stayed by her side. She finished cleaning the room in 1 day, so he ran away to make her leave. After almost dying in the cold, Alice found him and scolded him for trying to kill himself. She throws ice balls toward him and says that there is still someone who cares about him. She mentioned that when she was alone and sick as a child, he was the one who helped her feel better. Duke agreed to return to the mansion with her and realized he had begun to fall in love with her. Viola is thinking about what gift she will give to Rob. Duke suggests giving him glasses, but Viola disagrees. Alice then suggests that she give him a handkerchief, to which she agrees. Later, Duke realizes that today is Christmas Eve. Alice informs him that Kath and Zane are also coming and they will host a Christmas party, which makes him nervous as he is cursed. Viola meets with her mother, who orders her to stay at home and spend Christmas with her family. She also says not to dress like a child, which makes her sad. Walter follows Viola to Duke's mansion disguised as her driver. Meanwhile, Alice and Duke talk about the party. She points out that Santa Claus would have been nice, which makes him imagine Alice as Santa Claus. Cuff and Zane show up, and they bring a Christmas tree. Cuff and Alice start to decorate the tree, and Duke and Zane decorate the room. As they decorate, Duke advises Zane to let Cuff know how he feels about her. Later, Cuff shows Zane how beautiful the tree is. Zane reveals he has feelings for Cuff and attempts to compliment her, but Cuff falls asleep, and it is uncertain that she heard him. Finally, Viola reaches the mansion. She runs toward the door and drops the gift. Walter picks it up and sneaks in. He dresses up like Santa Claus using a dress he finds, but he gets caught by Cuff, who thinks he is the real Santa. She is overjoyed to see a real Santa, and Walter hands her the gift that Viola had dropped. He then tries to leave, but Cuff helps him by dropping him down the chimney. Meanwhile, Viola searches for the gift but fails to find it. She then meets with Duke and Zane. She hugs Zane as she finds him fluffy and super comfortable. Rob and Alice come in, and she declares that the Santa costume is messing up. Walter falls from the chimney and reveals his real identity. Duke is delighted to meet Walter because they have not spoken in a long time. A Cuff appears, and Viola sees the gift in her hand. Viola claims that the gift is hers, but Cuff says that it is her because Santa gave it to her, and they start arguing. Walter informs Duke about the unfairness of existing only as Duke's replacement. He also describes how he has always been treated as a substitute for him. Viola says there is poison on the ribbon of the gift, so Cuff uses her magic to destroy the poison by burning it. Duke takes the gift and puts out the fire. Duke responds that if she separated him from Alice, he would leave the family. Alice is concerned that one day Duke may have to decide between her and his family. Alice then meets with Rob, and he remembers being ordered to raise Duke away from the family. He became his surrogate father but blamed himself for Duke's isolation and depression. More and more Duke desired to commit seppuku. To solve this problem, Rob thought to bring someone close to Duke's age who can talk to him, and the first person who comes into his head is Alice. So he offers Alice a job as a maid, which makes her very happy because it means she'll be able to see Duke again, especially since she was mistreated by his aunt. Duke asks Alice to sing while he plays the owl and the cat on the piano, though they both end up embarrassed. As he walks away, she blows him a kiss. Despite Duke's assurance, Alice goes back to her room dejected because she knows that they will probably be split up when his spell is lifted. Viola and Walter search the family mansion for clues to break Duke's curse. Viola finds an old servant's logbook, When she leaves the storeroom, she confronts his mother. Her mother forces her to start wearing dresses to prepare for marriage. At Duke's mansion, Viola cries because her mother forced her to wear dresses. Rob appears and he likes her dress, so she decides to wear it. Viola insists on staying the night with Alice. When she enters her room, she sees Cuff. She borrows Cuff pajamas so she can sleep comfortably. She gives Alice the logbook, and it is revealed that the logbook was written by Alice's mother, Sharon. They sleep together in a small bed. Deleth calls Zane and asks him to give him a massage to Alice. She also informs him that Alice has an old logbook, which he has to destroy. But Zane disagrees, so she uses Cuff to threaten him. Alice meets up with Rob and shows him the logbook. When she reads it, she discovers that 2 witches visited the mansion around the time Duke was cursed. She recognizes one as Daleth, and another one is unknown. Right at that moment, Zane comes and he tells Alice that Daleth wants to befriend. He then asks her what she is reading. She replies that she is reading an old logbook. She also informs him that she didn't read much. Then Zane and Duke head over to play the piano to have some fun. When Alice is passing, she overhears Duke telling Zane how much he loves her, which makes her heart pound and blush red. Later, Duke sees Rob and asks him if he has seen Zane. He replies that he hasn't seen him, but he hears the sound of someone climbing the stairs. He goes to the top of the mansion and sees that Zane has stolen the logbook. Zane intends to burn it, but he feels guilty and gives the logbook to Duke. He informs him that it contains something secret about Daleth, which will help him break the curse. He also says that he was forced to do it. He was threatened by Daleth, and if he doesn't do it, Cuff will be in great danger. Duke hands over the logbook to him and tells her to burn it. He tells him that he will also do the same if Alice was used to threaten him. He then informs him that Daleth is spying on them with animal eyes and that Daleth cannot hear what they say. He reveals that there is only one way to keep the logbook from being destroyed and to keep Cuff safe. He disintegrates the logbook and tells him about his secret magic and requests him to keep it secret. Once Daleth stops spying, he can use his secret magic to restore the logbook from the single remaining piece. After that, he tells him to pretend that the logbook was destroyed. Daleth sees it and is satisfied that the logbook is gone. Daleth opens her mask, revealing she has Sharon's body in a coffin, though it is not revealed if she is dead or asleep. Alice is searching for the logbook, so Duke tells him that he took it, and it is the first time he lied to Alice. When Duke receives a letter from his mother calling him to the main house for the first time in a long time, he is surprised. The next day, Duke feels nervous because he has to meet with his mother. He hasn't watched his mother since he was a little boy. Actually, he wants to see his mother after he breaks the curse. Alice requests that he take her with him when he goes to see his mother. He agrees and it makes him happy. He plans to tell his mother about him and Alice. She asks him what he remembers about his life in this mansion as they go to the main residence. He replies that he only remembers playing the piano. He then asks the same question to her, and she replies that he only remembers him, which makes him blush. They finally reach the mansion and meet with Viola. Viola tells him that his mother wants to see him alone, and she takes him to her room. Walter informs him that he told his mother about Viola visiting his mansion, which led him to meet his mother. He sees her and she is disappointed because he still hasn't broken the curse. It was late, so she sends him to bed to talk it out in the morning. Duke is surprised when Viola claims her mother was actually in a good mood. Meanwhile, Alice meets with other maids who have worked with his mother, and they show immense affection toward her. When one of the maids is taking Alice to the room where she and her mother used to live, she meets with Duke's mother. Duke's mother, Gerbera, mistakes Alice for Sharon, whom she was good friends with, and becomes unexpectedly emotional. Later, Duke meets with Alice, and he informs him that the next day Viola will take him to the place where he was cursed. She then tries to kiss him, but he moves away. Viola takes Duke to the garden where the witch cursed him the next day, and it reminds him of how he was cursed. Somebody grabbed him from behind and said, "Love no one, be loved by no one, and live a life of misery." This is how he gets cursed. They meet with their mother, and Gerbera tells her to stay away from Duke. She also complains about Viola's outfit since she wears the same childlike outfit. Viola tells Duke she envies him because he lives away from their mom. At dinner, Gergera informs the children that they must choose the family successor because their father is terminally ill. She gives Duke till spring to cure his curse, or Walter will inherit the family property. Duke makes an emotional speech about his love for Alice, but when Gergera refuses to let in wed a maid, he accuses her of treating her kids like property. He declares that he will marry Alice. Viola and Walter also join him. Secretary Gergera is proud Duke was able to stand up to her. Duke tells Alice what he said to Gergera when they got home together, and he doesn't regret saying it. He pledges he will love her forever.